guys, Brian here, the Bearded Nerd. I am coming here from my house. This is kind of the new spot where I'll be recording, and with me I have one of my good and best friends, Mike. Mike, you play in Behold the D&D podcast, which is a weekly D&D kind of live game that we do online via Skype, Discord.
Mm-hmm.
And we get together and we play.
Yeah.
But we've known each other for what, almost 10 years now.
Yeah, coming up that way.
We've been playing World of Warcraft together. We've played, Final Fantasy together.
Yep.
We've played a little bit of Warhammer together.
We played Magic the Gathering together.
Yep.
Played everything together, yeah.
So, in this case, we've had a very big gaming background together.
Yeah.
However, you're kind of new to D&D, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so can you talk to us about how did you start playing D&D and really just kind of what made you want to play D&D?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll take it a little further back. I've been tabletop gaming for a very long time. I started, if you want to get into the nitty gritty of what I think tabletop gaming is, I think anything played on a table could classify as tabletop gaming.
Okay.
So Monopoly, in my opinion, is a form of tabletop gaming. Now, if you're talking about more of a fantasy based, I've been playing Warhammer, for 15 years.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, I played a lot growing up, and then I quit because girls, school, college.
Well, I know you got into sports heavily too. So
Yeah.
was there a big community for Warhammer though?
I had 3 or 4 friends that I played Warhammer with back then.
Okay.
And honestly, we're 28 now. We look at a 12-year-old coming in. Your first idea, your first thought, and nothing against any kids who are listening to this. There's nothing against you guys. It's just there's a certain culture and language to people who are a little older playing tabletop games. I don't want to tell anyone not to play tabletop games. Absolutely play tabletop games. They're the most accepting group of people in the world.
For sure.
100%. But anyway, back to your main question, just how I started and playing D&D specifically. It was actually at school.
Okay.
I had some friends, House of Brothers, that you know of, fraternity brothers, for lack of a better term, that were really big into D&D, but they kind of played it a different way.
Mm-hmm.
It was I think it was like 3.5.
Yeah, they played 3.5, and it was a very homebrew type game, which was great. And I remember them playing it, but because of I remember at that time too, for me personally, I was going through my thesis, and I was just really, really anxious and really stressed out. So I really didn't play as often as I wanted.
Yeah.
So I remember that. I remember that 3.5 game.
Yeah. So and then I lived with a couple of our frat brothers later on when I moved up to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we kind of played a little bit up there. But we focus more on computer gaming, which is still really my focus when it comes to gaming. But that being said, I love D&D. I love being able just to create nothing out of your imagination. Something out of your imagination. The sense of
for sure.
You're hopping into the realm of Tolkien almost at that point in time, because you have a character, you're playing in first person, all that awesome stuff. Now, some stuff I would recommend to new players: do your research.
Yeah, for sure.
Do your research, do your homework, learn the spells, learn how many times you can use a spell.
Yeah.
All that. And whenever somebody asks you to do, a solo shot, do it.
Yeah.
You learn the game, you learn different classes. Don't pick the same class over and over and over again.
Play around with it.
Yeah, play around with it. Have fun with it. Do a hybrid class.
Yeah.
But that's what I would recommend. Really, just do your homework.
So, with you being a newer player, what is your favorite part about D&D? I've asked this in some of my other videos. I've asked, what's your favorite part? Because a lot of people say there's, they divide between role playing and combat.
Yeah.
And for me, I think it's a little bit of both.
Right.
But again, an example for me is my favorite part is the interaction and the role play.
Yeah.
Because combat is just rolling dice and it's numerical.
Right.
But that's just me. I know a lot of people who get into the combat aspect, especially you as from that tabletop Warhammer
it's all combat.
background. It's all combat.
So my favorite thing, other than the DM's creativity, shout out to Sam Gennady, by the way, is probably being able to role play. Really, honestly and truly. I played a lot of World of Warcraft. I've been playing World of Warcraft since 2004. It is 2019. I've been playing that game for 15 years.
True.
I never played on an RP server, role-playing server for those who don't know, because what happens, for those who know World of Warcraft, everyone knows what happens in Goldshire stays in Goldshire.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I was more of a PvP, PvE realms, but being able to have that with friends, and because we play over Discord and Skype, being able to play Dungeons & Dragons with friends that I don't see on a daily basis.
For sure.
You know, you and I live 80 miles apart.
Yeah.
Is
so
really
it's
nice.
easy for us to interact, and it's easy for us to, you know, you can come to my house for my monthly game, and you can play.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's easier in that regard, and it's awesome that we have Discord and Skype. But one of my biggest things that I've always kind of kept away from in that regard is Skype and Discord, although it allows you to have human interaction and it allows you to still communicate with your friends and have a game, it doesn't fill the role-playing aspect for me.
That's fair.
It doesn't give me that kind of, because I want to be able to say, okay, if I look at you as a player, as a fellow player, and I say something, I want to see, oh, did they react a certain way? Let me write this down. Or, hey, did I come across as a jerk? Let me pull you aside and say, hey, I didn't mean to say it this way or that way.
It's harder to do inside checks and things like that over Skype and Discord than, like, shout out to Critical Role. You guys are awesome. I've been watching a lot of your YouTube videos. But being able to literally see Matt Mercer be like, do an inside check. Do an inside check. Do an inside check. Do an inside check.
Yeah.
It's awesome to see that because they're trying to, you know, maybe fool one another at some point in time along down the line. But yeah, I would agree with that.
And 100%. It's one of those things like Acquisitions Incorporated. They're a great show, and they're, you know, actually check out their new book that's been published. It's really funny. It's really awesome. And it's one of those things that Chris Perkins, as the DM, he can read the players and say, okay, their reaction was X, Y, Z.
Right.
Let me tailor this. And again, maybe Chris Perkins isn't thinking about that, but Matt Mercer or Matt Colville from, you know, the Chain Reaction. All these different podcasts and all these different live shows that you can see your actual players playing. It's really big. So now that we're talking about like the online stuff, what do you think about online playing and when regards to combat and Theater of the Mind? I've talked about Theater of the Mind, and Theater of the Mind is great, but in regards to combat, you being tactical, having that more tactical frame of Warhammer, like you have minis. You know that you have certain things that, I mean, again, I didn't play a lot of Warhammer, but I remember you had those measuring tapes and whatnot to make sure you had certain distance.
I'm so happy they got rid of that 8th edition.
I mean, that's the thing though, like,
a lot of it, not all of it.
You have that a little bit in D&D because you have some of these old school guys that came from that and say, well, wait a minute, I don't, you know, maybe they have terrain, and a lot of times if you have like really good terrain builds that are very realistic, you're gonna have that because it helps you with combat. What do you think about combat / Theater of the Mind regarding online play?
So shout out to our DM Sam Gennady on Behold, a D&D podcast. He's really good at explaining things, and if we have questions, we say, you know, DM, how far am I, how this, that, and the other. But that can be tricky because it can slow down combat. It can slow down the pace of the story and things like that without being able to see, you know, what you're doing. I can't look at a piece and be like, okay, each square is 5 feet. I'm 10 squares, I'm 50 feet. You know, I have to be like, hey, DM, where's the demon? You know, for those, I play a human paladin. I'm very vanilla when it comes to D&D. Anyway, and so I'm like, you know, where's the fiend?
I too play a paladin.
Yes, he does.
Dragonborn, but it's okay.
Well, my human.
It's okay.
So he can be like 55 feet behind a tree. I have to then think, okay, DM, can I see any part of him? You know, like it's one of those.
You have to really communicate.
Yeah, so it's all about communication, and again, huge props to our dungeon master for always being able to explain what he's really trying to get across. But it can be kind of tricky at times. I'm a huge advocate of having the board in front of you.
Yeah.
And because of certain situations, the DM might not be able to do that, as far as they might not have the right setup.
True.
Camera wise, they might not have enough money to get everything they need.
Because I feel like you would have to have like an aerial camera to look down at the battle map, look down at your minis, and say, okay, I place, let's say for me, Dragonborn Paladin, you have 30 feet of movement. Okay, I move 25 feet. The enemy is 5 feet away from me. Okay, I can still move. Great, no problem. Now with Theater of the Mind, you do have to say, hey, DM, how far am I away? I'm 30 feet away. Perfect, I'm in range. I go, and then you explain your action. I go towards the enemy and attack.
Right.
It's that type of communication. Now, I think also, and again, Sam, our DM, does a really great job at explaining in detail.
Absolutely.
Saying, hey, you're here in this swamp. You guys were just in a swamp where we're in a swamp. Again, a swamp, we get into our mind, the environment of a swamp, it's bad, the water, mud.
Shrek.
Yeah, I couldn't think of Shrek. It's all this environment, all these environments are putting into your head from past experiences. But okay, you're in a swamp, and this is what's going on. You see this, you smell this, and that helps, especially with Theater of the Mind. But again, from your perspective, transitioning from a really, I don't want to speak too harshly about Warhammer, but it's pretty linear. It's this is the rules.
Yeah.
This is what it is. You can't.
Well, so
deviate from it.
Games Workshop has been really good about having different styles of combat, like capture this breaking point, capture that, do this, do that. But my favorite's obviously you have an army here, you have an army here, and you just go.
Yeah. And a lot of their games are like that. They have the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit game that's very much like that. It's like, okay, 2 forces here.
But you're not wrong. It is a very linear game. It's very straightforward. You have
it's binary in a sense. Where D&D, I feel like D&D is one of those things that to this day, if Gary Gygax would come to your game, he would say, it was meant to play like this.
Yeah.
It was meant to play in a form and fashion where you would have the rule of cool. Now, again, I am about having the rules set in place. They're there for a reason. However, the rules aren't there to limit you. They're there to help you play a game.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's how I think about it. So how do you, as a new player or as a newer player, kind of gravitate towards that, where now you have this open world concept?
Right. So I think part of, for me, being able to play a game, and a lot of people might not make this connection, but this is just how my brain works. Being able to play a game like World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
Being able to see how, granted though it's not a turn-based game, being able to see how an open world style of combat works, being able to have the freedom to be like, okay, I need to go to Stormwind. Getting on you're flying out, go to Stormwind. And, in Dungeons & Dragons, I can think, okay, DM, how far is the closest city? And we all know that nobody likes to do miles or kilometers in fantasy realms. It's 8 million leagues. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like, how far is a league? And then you have to ask the DM, how far is a league? And so...
Because also you have to, and some DMs might take a league in the traditional sense of measurement, but then there's others that say, well, a league is actually this amount of mileage or space, because again, in their world, perfect example, the Fae. The Feywild is one of those areas where, like, it's explained where the brightest color in the Fae is, it's like the most it's the brightest.
Yeah.
So reds in the Fae are the brightest forms of red.
Right.
Things of that nature. But everything's kind of like Alice in Wonderland type.
Yeah.
So a day in the Fae is like maybe a month or a week or whatever in the normal material plane.
Right.
So you have a lot of that too,
Yeah.
where you have to take into consideration. Like me, on really just on the level of linear progression,
Yeah.
I like to say, well, a mile is this,
Yeah.
or 2 days travel,
Right.
things of that nature.
Right.
Where again, you can role play pretty
Yeah.
quickly and pretty easily. Like if you're not having combat, you can role play days, weeks, months,
Yeah.
years easily.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have a mutual friend Jake, whose
Mhm.
family has been playing a game for like 7 years or something like that. They've
Yeah.
been playing a consistent game. But back to your original question, as far as combat goes, being a new player, like you said, you take it based on experiences.
Yeah.
So like if I say I finish off a fiend,
Yeah.
I'll go back. One of my favorite sword attacks is the episode of Dragon Ball Z when Trunks kills
Yeah.
Mecha Freezer.
Yeah.
Frieza. It's my favorite attack because he straight down and then cuts him into small little pork chops. But
I mean, it is a pivotal, like,
exactly.
it's pivotal in the minds of anyone who loved Dragon Ball Z.
Exactly.
That was like the most perfect way to end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Frieza and then Frieza. But anyway, but like you take from the experiences of what you've watched, what you've read.
Yeah.
I've read all Lord of the Rings. I've read almost all of Tolkien's works.
Yeah.
And they say that reading is TV for the brain.
Yes.
I know a lot of people would be like, ugh. But it's the truth,
Yeah, it is.
I also read a lot of the Warhammer books because they're just so detailed.
Yeah.
And you have to take what you read and be like, okay, I'm a paladin. I have this sword. I have this armor. I look like this. I'm fighting a zombie. And then you have to, so there you in a microsecond, because our brains are so awesome. I don't want to get into all that, but you take from experiences
Yeah.
and you put it into what you're doing.
Yep.
And sometimes that can give you a headache, but for me personally, being a new player and doing that, that's just how I cope with it.
Gotcha.
I take from again experiences and I just lay them in front of me. All of the zombies that we have fought in our campaign
Yeah.
are undead
Yeah.
from World of Warcraft in my mind.
Yeah.
That's what they look like.
Yeah.
So.
And that's the thing too, like, I believe that the imagination is so powerful because the undead, for me, are like the undead that you would find in like a World War Z.
Yeah.
That's how I view them, but
Yeah.
more fantasy setting.
Right.
So it's interesting that you talk about that. Now it's also interesting to think about kind of like large scale combat from a new player perspective, because I mean we can have a whole episode about large scale combat.
Yeah.
My thing, as someone who's been playing for a bit and really has been in the culture for a long time, what do you find the D&D culture to be like compared to, like, again, we've been through the Magic the Gathering community.
James.
We've been into shout out James, we love you. Magic the Gathering. We have been with the you specifically being with the Games Workshop and the Warhammer community. Going back to the World of Warcraft community, how would you compare all that to D&D, and really, do you find similarities to it, or do you find that each kind of have a different microcosm or personality to them?
I would say each has similarities but differences. I think a lot of the people who play Dungeons and Dragons have either played or play World of Warcraft.
Okay.
Same thing with Warhammer.
Mm-hmm.
I truly do believe that because it's all, it.
Or even if you haven't, you would do well playing
Exactly. So
Warhammer.
if you can imagine, audience, with me for a second, a big circle of nerdom.
Yeah.
Not in a derogatory term at all, but just the nerd community and the geek community is the most welcoming community in the history of the universe.
Yeah.
So you take that and you have overlapping circles within that big community.
Yep.
Now, for me, Warcraft has changed.
Okay.
You have the very, very few tight-knit group of us that have been playing since vanilla.
Okay.
Original Warcraft, who don't know. And we know what it's like to raid AQ40. We know what it's like to fight Cthulhu. We know what it's like to not ever beat Cthulhu. And then the very few people who, shout out to all of you out there that actually got to fight Kel'Thuzad in the original, they know what it's like. But then you look at the people who didn't progress in World of Warcraft as far, that survived Baron's Chat. But then you take that into a Dungeons and Dragons side, and you can joke about the World of Warcraft, but you have people that we know who are a little more focused on what they're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you have people that we know who are kind of happy-go-lucky with it, or people that are new. So it just depends. So I think the community as a whole is fantastic.
Yeah, I agree.
I think there should be veteran players who take people who are interested in playing Dungeons and Dragons and do just a small, maybe
like a one-shot
campaign. Be like, you're all level 8, and you have this fiend who's really strong. We're gonna take 3 hours. We're gonna go and we're gonna kill him, and you're gonna learn Dungeons and Dragons. That way, we can incorporate you into some of these bigger.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think
and I don't mean to talk about World of Warcraft a lot, but it's like that's
no. This is a safe space where you can talk about anything.
Yeah.
Like, my biggest thing with D&D, and whether you're new or a veteran, is you gotta have fun, and the way you have fun is gonna be different to everyone else.
Absolutely.
Like, I played World of Warcraft and I enjoyed that, and I still enjoy it. I don't do it as often because, as you know, you would have to spend to really get to the level that you were playing at and that maybe I was trying to play at, because I'm not great, but you have to spend hours upon hours upon hours. Like, my buddy John and I, shout out to John, we played Diablo 3 specifically.
Good game. Shout out to Blizzard too.
Yeah, shout out to Blizzard.
Oh, excuse me, they're Activision Blizzard now.
Well, either way, shout out to you. Hope you find this video and like and subscribe. But, I see World of Warcraft and I say, man, I have to put in X amount of hours.
Yeah.
Diablo, I spend hours. I've had to have spent, I can't even think about how many hours I've spent in Diablo. And it was fun and it was great.
Yeah.
But I also noticed that from a community aspect too, it's easy to say to someone in Dungeons and Dragons, because D&D's been around for a long time, as we know, and especially we survived the Satanic Panic, which a lot of people, unfortunately, that was a horrible miscommunication.
70s, right?
Yeah, it was really 70s, 80s type. I have to remember specific dates, but late 70s into the early 80s, and again, it depends on what part of the world. Because if you were in the Midwest or the South, you might still feel some of the effects of the Satanic Panic. Now, again, it's a huge miscommunication of what D&D actually is. Yeah. I know a lot of people here in the South that are your typical, like, preacher's kids.
Yeah.
And the preacher is actually the one saying, hey, wait a minute, I love Dungeons & Dragons because it's promoting friendship, it's promoting communication, it's promoting math. You have to use dice and add numbers. It's promoting reading. It's all this stuff. And, you have advocates like Gary Gygax, who, again, founder and awesome person. You have all these different people. I mean, you take Tolkien and C.S. Lewis in their own kind of mythos fantasy. Obviously, Tolkien being very strong in the mythos. Like, you have that and you say, and people realize, oh, this isn't really a bad thing. Yeah. But, besides
Lovecraft.
You have great things to pull from, and that's where I love with D&D is that as a new player, as a new DM even, you take those experiences, you're able to mold them, merge them together, and try to make something out of it.
Yeah.
So, last question, and again, this question for me is kind of a big thing, is what would be the first move that you would recommend someone make? So, for example, you got someone who they want to play D&D. Yeah. Maybe they've seen Critical Role. Maybe they haven't. I don't know.
Yeah.
But they know about Dungeons & Dragons, but they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
What would you recommend?
Find your local game store. I'm a huge advocate of local game stores. Find it. You're going to have people playing Warhammer Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering. Friday Night Magic's huge at your local game store. Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh. It doesn't matter about the game.
Yeah.
Find your local game store. Talk to somebody there. The odds are they know somebody who's doing a campaign, starting a campaign.
True.
Can put you in the right contact. The internet's your best friend.
Yeah.
And your worst enemy at the same time. That's a whole different conversation. But when it comes to wanting to start something, like Dungeons and Dragons, Google local comic book store or local, game store,
Right.
Dungeons and Dragons near me, something.
Yeah.
But definitely do that. That would be your the first thing I'd recommend. And when you get there and they say, this is the person you want to talk to, give them your name, give them your number. They're, again, the most welcoming community you could ever find.
You're always gonna find a welcoming embrace in the D&D world. Whether
Nerd
you've
world.
played, in the nerddom as a whole, you're always gonna find a welcoming community because we as a community are just that way. That's just our nature, and a lot of times people don't realize that we as nerds are also athletes, or we are
Cops, firefighters, nurses, doctors, anyone.
It doesn't matter what your profession is. It's what you do in the sense of your gaming table and how you have fun. If it's a hobby, it's a hobby.
Exactly.
So, I totally agree with that. I agree. Go to your local game store. You can Google a local game store. You could probably find some stuff on Discord and things of that nature. Probably go on a Reddit.
I'd say
subreddit.
I'd say Reddit is probably gonna be your next best bet.
Yeah. A subreddit, maybe you can get into kind of saying, hey, I'm in this area.
Yeah. Who's near me?
Facebook too probably would be a great way to do.
Yeah. Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook, really any of the social media platforms, you can probably go and say, hey. YouTube as well. You could probably find some really good communities, and you could probably kind of reverse engineer it.
Yeah.
And say, hey, listen, I found out that you're in this area. What are the game stores around me?
Right.
Things of that nature.
I guarantee you Matt Mercer's not only doing Critical Role when it comes to Dungeons & Dragons. I guarantee you he's not DMing one of his own games and he's in it and playing it.
Yeah, he might be playing a game. I don't know. I don't know if he has the time, but hell, he might be playing in a game.
Yeah.
You never know. In the realm of possibility, he might be playing in a game.
Yeah.
It's just, again, trying to find people to play with at the end of the day.
Yep.
And because this game is about community.
Yeah.
So.
Yep, I agree.
Well, I appreciate it, Mike.
Yeah,
I really do.
Thank you.
Until next time, y'all, keep gaming.